Marshall Chess is the son of Chess Records co-founder Leonard Chess. Marshall grew up in the offices and studios of Chicago's Chess Records and went on to produce and compile dozens of the label's best-selling releases. Marshall has put together a new record. It's called New Moves, The Chess Project. This album dives into the family's Chess Records vault, offering reinterpretations of chess blues legends material. I'll talk to Marshall Chess about that project and his family's friendship with artists like Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry, after we check out this new version of Howlin' Wolf's classic Smokestack Lightnin'. This is from the album New Moves by The Chess Project. This version includes Bernard Fowler, Skip McDonald, and Keith LeBlanc. Smokestack Lightnin' from the recent release The Chess Project New Moves. Marshall Chess put that together. He's the son of Chess Records co-founder Leonard Chess, and he told me about how the label began releasing blues records.
At that time, white people did not really buy the blues. Yes, a few fans around the world, a few people in the South who heard it on the radio, but it's primarily black people's music. We put out blues hits. They didn't sell millions. If you sold 20,000, you had a top blues hit. And we had the Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart of blues, Muddy, Wolf, Walter, the best. And we put out great blues records. And probably our main number one star, who I'm the biggest fan of, was Muddy Waters. So Muddy Waters got a job at the Newport Jazz Festival. It was one of the first jazz live festivals in America that hired a blues band. And there was a live recording of the whole festival, and we picked up the tapes and we put it out as an album called Muddy Waters at Newport Live. 8 or 10 months later, my uncle called me in the office. He said, Marshall, something really strange is happening. My uncle said, we're getting all kinds of orders from Boston, Massachusetts. We can't figure it out. I traced it down, and it's because all those white kids had heard Muddy at the Newport Jazz Festival. All those kids from Harvard, all those great colleges on the East Coast, they're buying that album. I think we got a whole new market starting. That's how it really began. So I really began, rather than being at the original recordings, one of my first jobs after college was making blues compilations. The real folk blues, more real folk blues, super blues, Muddy, rare and unissued. All those albums I put together, wrote the liner notes myself under the name Marshall Ball, and we knew there was this new audience, and we aimed that audience at those kids that bought Muddy live at Newport. That was always my job, spreading the great, magical Chicago blues to the whole world, to this new white market. And I did that my whole career. And then in 1968, I said, there's another new market. It's alternative radio is starting. There's this psychedelic market. Oh, kids are smoking pot, taking LSD. There's a whole new thing happening. There's a new kind of radio, FM radio in America. I want to start a record label, and I want to aim it at another new market. Then I started a label called Cadet Concept. So I did all these psychedelic blues albums. My most famous one was Electric Mud. It was Muddy Waters, which the blues purists hated at first. But again, they didn't know the psychology I'm telling you. They didn't know that I wasn't trying to make Muddy Waters a psychedelic artist. He was just like the actor in a movie that I was producing. It was to spread it to this new audience. And I must say it worked. So then I began doing those kind of records, Father and Sons, using all the great white players that I did in '69. But my last stuff I did was Howlin' Wolf in London, Chuck Berry in London. And then I began with the Rolling Stones. That was sort of how it evolved from making compilations for the purists to try to bring new people in, new young people, then this new psychedelic market. And that's why I'm not afraid to experiment with this new album, New Moves, because it's doing the same thing. It's really, there's no way I can take it's not psychedelic, it's not hip-hop. They're just it's conceptual art. It's using these great lyrics that I love. These songs all have a message that's important to me. There were songs that I played when I had trouble with my wife, when my girlfriend cheated on me. These were the lyrics I went to. I learned as a very young guy that one of the magic things about blues was the psychological aspect. So many blues songs about people's troubles. And you have to understand, again, this comes from all this million black people that moved up from the South, had all these problems assimilating into this new culture. They didn't go to psychiatrists. They didn't even have bank accounts. This was before civil rights in America. So these blues lyrics made people feel better. In a way, it was like a therapist. When my girlfriend in high school cheated on me, I'd play a blues song.
From the Chess Project, New Moves, here's So Glad I'm Living.
Changed my mind. She said, I'm so glad I'm living. Baby, I'm so glad you're mine. so glad I'm living. I said, baby, I'm so glad you're mine. So glad. I believe. So glad. I believe. So glad. So glad you're mine. I believe. So glad. My baby loves me. She loves me with a thrill. I don't believe she ain't trying to get nobody killed. I said, I believe I changed my mind. She said, I'm so glad I'm living. I said, baby, I'm so glad you're mine. So glad you're mine. I believe, yeah. So glad. So glad you're mine. So glad you're mine. Yeah. Oh, my baby loves me. Oh, gives me such a thrill. So glad my
So Glad I'm Living, previously recorded by Muddy Waters, that new version from the Chess Project, New Moves. I asked Marshall Chess about the relationship his family had with Muddy Waters.
Muddy was was truly a friend of my father. I remember the first time I met him. I often tell the story. If you can visualize it, we were really middle class, lower middle class, just on the verge of making money. And my dad had just started Chess Records, and it wasn't a Cadillac, but it was always going to be a nice American car pulled up. This guy pulled out, and he had on a bright green, fluorescent green suit, and he had hair that looked like it was 10 inches high. And I looked down, and his shoes had like cow skin, like fur on them. And I looked up, and he looked at me, and he said, you must be young Chess. Is your papa home? And that was my first time meeting Muddy Waters, you know. And then he became my friend ever since then, my whole life, and my father's good friend. You know, he started out. He was originally on Aristocrat Records when he came up from Mississippi, and Aristocrat Records was a record. They came to my father's nightclub, the Macombo Lounge, to record. And my father was fascinated with another new way, a new entertainment way. You know, he went from liquor store to jukebox to live music, now records, you know. And he worked while he had the tavern last year, he worked as a salesman for Aristocrat. Got to know Muddy, they had white artists too. Muddy was one of the few artists. He was like considered a folk artist. He was actually a truck driver in Chicago. Then my father bought it. He ended up buying out. The club burnt down, and he had a good insurance policy, I guess. I sort of remember them counting the money from the insurance, and they bought out the Partners and Aristocrat. And then in 1950 made it Chess, and it wasn't the first Chess record, but it was the first Muddy Waters right that year in 1950. I think it was I Feel Like Going Home was the first one acoustic with Muddy. And then, Muddy once, when my dad died, there was a radio show, a tribute to him, and Muddy called in, and he said, I lost a friend today. He said, I'm sure Leonard Chess would have said, Chess Records was made by Muddy Waters, and Muddy Waters was made by Chess Records. That's what he told me. That's what he said on the radio. They were good friends. Yes, they were. Their lives got a lot better after they met each other. What could be a better story than that? That's a blues story,
Here's Muddy Waters with Feel So Good, taken from the album Live at Newport from 1960, produced by our guest, Marshall Chess.
Fail, I feel so good. Well, I feel so good. I feel so good. I feel like born to jive. I'm going down to the station just to meet a train. My baby coming home. I got that angel. I feel so good. Yeah, I feel so good. I feel so good. I feel like born to jive. I feel so good. I hope I always will. I feel like a jack out of a jenny, way over behind the hill. I feel so good. Well, I feel so good. I feel so good that I feel like born to jive. Think about it. Thank you.
Muddy Waters, Feel So Good from Live at Newport, 1960. My guest on Saturday Night Blues tonight, Marshall Chess, the son of Chess Records co-founder Leonard Chess. Another groundbreaking artist the Chess family had an important relationship with was Chuck Berry.
1955. That was the year of Maybelline, Chuck Berry, and Bo Diddley by Bo Diddley. That was our year of crossover. The first Chess records that really sold to white kids. Because that was when riding around in my automobile, every teenagers discovered cars in America with radios in them. And then radio discovered kids were riding around with nowhere to go. And that whole syndrome started. But Chuck Berry was great. Chuck Berry came to Chess through Muddy Waters. Chuck had come to Chicago from St. Louis, and he went to Muddy Waters. at a bar, where Muddy was performing. And Muddy told him to go see Leonard Chess. And the next morning he went and saw my father, who heard a tape with a song called Ida Red, it was called. He didn't like the lyric, but he liked the melody, he liked the beat. And he told Chuck to go rewrite that song and come back. A week or two later, I think it was, Chuck came back with Maybelline. And then, this is the great Chuck Berry story. My dad went to New York, and in New York had a famous disc jockey, the guy who invented the word rock and roll, Alan Freed. And my dad went and played him, and he also heard right away that Chuck Berry Maybelline was a special record. And he said to my dad, I hate to say this, but that was the era of payola, when these small independent labels like Chess, Atlantic, the Roulette, that's where they paid disc jockeys to play their music. Without that, it would have never happened. And it was all part of it. It wasn't illegal then. It wasn't considered wrong, but that's how it went. So my dad made a deal with Alan Freed, and he left by car on his way back to Chicago. When he got to Cleveland, Ohio, on the way back, he called my uncle. My uncle said, "What's going on? The phone hasn't stopped ringing about that Chuck Berry record." Turns out Alan Freed played it all night. He did no other record. His whole show was over and over. And that's when we say the record broke and spread across America. And it was spreading like a tsunami until a lot of America found out that Chuck Berry was black. And I would say after that, half the radio plays stopped instantly. That was a very racist time in America, radio. The white radio did not play black artists too much. But it was the start of everything. And then Chuck got in trouble. He brought a young prostitute across the state line in his car and got arrested. We tried so hard to keep him out of prison. And even though she was a prostitute, she was underage, and it was in the South. To keep his name, when Chuck was in prison, we put out an album called Chuck Berry on Stage, where we put together all of his studio recordings and added fake applause to make it seem like he was live and touring, We called that Chuck Berry on Stage. It was a fake just to keep his name out there. And then he came out of prison, and he came right from prison to Chess Records, desperate. He knew his career was cut off, And my dad gave me I can remember the day. He gave me $100 bill, and he said, "Take Chuck down to Chicago Avenue." There was a men's clothing shop there where where the artists bought all that flashy kind of stage clothing. $100 then was probably like $1,000 now, He gave me $100. He said, "Go take Chuck down there and get him some clothes. You're going on the road with him." I said, "What?" I said, "Yep, I got to send you with him. He just came out of prison. Your job is to go with him. And if there's any problem, you call me. That's your job. We can't afford any more problems." So that's how I began going on the road with Chuck Berry.
Thank you so much, Marshall. I really appreciate it. I was really looking forward to this, and your stories are fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your help with spreading the blues. Take it easy, man. It's great talking to you.
Riding along in my automobile, my baby beside me at the wheel. I stole a kiss at the turn of a mile, my curiosity running wild, cruising and playing the radio with no particular place to go. Riding along in my automobile, I was anxious to tell her the way I feel. So I told her softly and sincere, and she leaned and whispered in my ear, cuddling more and driving slow, with no particular place to go.
particular place to go. So we parked way out on the Kokomo. The night was young and the moon was gold. So we both decided to take a stroll. Can you imagine the way I felt? I couldn't unfasten a safety belt. Riding along in my calaboose, still trying to get her belt to loose. All the way home I held a grudge for the safety belt that wouldn't budge. Cruising and playing the radio with no particular place to go.
No Particular Place to Go. Chuck Berry on Chess Records, going back to 1964. Legendary record man Marshall Chess has been my guest on the show tonight. He worked with all the chess legends in Chicago and went on to run Rolling Stones Records for 7 years. Another story for another day. Marshall Chess has just put together a new album of reinterpretations of some of the chess classics. It's called The Chess Project New Moves.